Welcome to the Diesel Engine Fundamentals course. Upon completion of this course, you will be able to describe the key features and advantages of passenger car diesel engines, identify diesel fuel injection systems and components, identify air management systems and components, identify emission control devices, compare compression ignition and spark ignition engines, and describe how NOx and particulate emissions are formed. Common rail diesels were introduced to the U.S. light truck market in 2001, and since then, many car makers have added common rail diesels to their model lineups. Modern diesel engines typically feature compression ratios in the range of 14 to 22 to 1 versus a gasoline engine's 9 or 10 to 1. They also feature ultra-responsive, high-pressure fuel injectors capable of multiple injection events to reduce noise and vary fuel delivery during the combustion cycle. A common rail design refers to the fuel rail, which is shared between all the fuel injectors. Turbochargers often provide diesels with extra breathing capacity and increase output power. These features and other emissions technologies combine to produce powerful, quiet, free revving, and economical engines with lots of torque. These clean, environmentally responsible engines are a clear departure from the noisy and smoky diesels of the past. The somewhat negative history of diesel engines in passenger vehicles has carried over into misconceptions about newer diesel vehicles. In the early 2000s, the EPA mandated all diesel engines must convert to clean diesel technology. In response, manufacturers developed new emissions control devices and fuel refiners developed new low-sulfur fuels. These efforts and technology reduced diesel emissions by about 97% when compared to earlier diesel engines. These EPA regulations were phased in, beginning with the 2007 model year. Sulfur dioxide, a chief culprit in acid rain formation, was drastically reduced with clean diesel technology. Nitrous oxide emissions, primarily responsible for visible smog, were also dramatically reduced. Particulate matter, carbon soot, and aromatics that produce the old diesel smell and visible smoke have also been virtually eliminated. In addition to improved fuels and more effective exhaust treatment, recent diesel engines include design changes that result in more complete combustion, further reducing emissions. Clean diesels now have an environmental footprint similar to gasoline engines and hybrid gas-electric vehicles. The clean diesel engine is a far cry from the smelly, smoking, polluting diesels of the recent past. Let's begin with the basics, the four-stroke cycle. The first movement is the intake stroke. Intake valves are opened, and the piston moves down to draw in air. When the piston has moved to the bottom of its stroke, the intake valve closes and the crankshaft begins pushing the piston up in the cylinder. This is the beginning of the second stroke, the compression stroke. The upward movement of the piston in the closed cylinder compresses the air and packs the air's oxygen molecules tightly against the fuel molecules that are injected directly into the cylinder. When the piston is near the top of its stroke, a tremendous amount of heat is generated and the combustion or power stroke begins. The fuel and air mixture is so hot it ignites without a spark plug. The burning fuel heats the air in the cylinder and creates tremendous pressure. This pressure pushes the piston down with great force. When the piston reaches the bottom of the cylinder, the fourth stroke, the exhaust stroke, begins. The exhaust valve opens and the upward motion of the piston expels the remaining hot exhaust gas past the open valve. Conventional engines manage a contained explosion in a closed chamber. The piston forms the floor of the chamber. Fuel contains tightly bonded hydrocarbon molecules. Combustion breaks the hydrocarbon bonds and releases the bonding energy. The released energy heats the cylinder's air and creates extreme pressures that push the piston down the cylinder. A connecting rod transfers the downward movement to the crankshaft, and the crankshaft translates the movement into a forceful rotary motion. The crankshaft's rotary motion is carried through shafts and gears to the drive wheels. While diesel engines don't have an ignition system, they do include equipment that's not found on conventional gasoline engines. The fuel filter assembly helps ensure good fuel quality by filtering the fuel, heating fuel if needed in cold weather, and separating water that might have entered the fuel tank. Glow plugs provide additional heat to ensure proper combustion during cold starts. Each cylinder has its own glow plug. The high-pressure fuel pump increases fuel delivery to extremely high pressures required for direct injection. Since there's no throttle in a diesel engine, manifold vacuum is not available. Therefore, diesels often have a vacuum pump which provides operating power for components such as power brakes and turbocharger wastegates. The fuel rail pressure sensor provides feedback to the PCM for continuously changing fuel pressure control.